Hello and welcome to another episode of Scene on Streaming. And in this video, I wanted to talk about the first volume, in spoiler terms, I guess, of Stranger Things 4. So the fourth season of Stranger Things just came out a week ago at the time of recording this video. So it was a Friday. First volume, 7 episodes, launched on Netflix. And on that Friday, me and Connie watched the first episode, which was like an hour and a half long. Really enjoyed it. Saturday comes, I have to go to work for the evening. I get into work, I'm there for maybe an hour or so. My voice is going, I'm sorry, I apologize, we'll work through this together. I get into work for a few hours, and then there's a customer who's just like, oh yeah, do you see that Stranger Things? I can't believe that it turned out that the orderly was Vecna and number one. And I'm just like, oh, okay then, that's the ending. Thank you. And you just get that thing where it's just like, dude, it's been out less, well, not less, but it's been out for, a day and a half, 24 hours. And you've already watched all 9 hours or however much that for those first 7 episodes are. And you're now openly spoiling things in a public forum. I just thought, oh, well, there you go then. And that just really like took the wind out of my sails for a couple of days. It's just like, wow, great. That was a cool twist that was completely spoiled for me. Why would you even go right into that from the get-go? And he's like, yeah, it's great, I'm going to watch it again tonight. And you get these people who just moan about the Marvel movies, like, oh, 2.5 hours is just too long for a movie. And then they'll gladly and gleefully watch 9 hours of something in one sitting, in one day, and then want to watch it again the next day. I don't, there's a disparity there that just doesn't make any fucking sense to me whatsoever. Anyway. And then there's people saying, oh, the Stranger Things episodes are just too long. And my response to that on Twitter was, if only Netflix would implement a pause function. You can just stop wherever you want and just continue watching it and make your own episodes. It's very easy. You're not forced to sit and watch it like in a cinema. Anyway, I'd love to go all deep on this and do a really lengthy review. I don't really have the time to, so I just wanted to give my brief thoughts. And again, just with all spoilers on the table, I really loved this first volume of season 4 because it brings so many different storylines by the time we get to that 7th episode together beautifully. I thought the way everything was just spiraling out at the beginning and then just spinning around, and then it's just all kind of starting to get into a synchronicity as we get down to the 7th episode, and it all just clicks like a clock. And it just fits. It really does. And that wasn't even an attempt to work in a clock reference there. And I really like that. The kind of the image and the kind of eerie chime of that grandfather clock is a fantastic kind of, I don't know, a symbol and a kind of signifier of that character of Vecna, who I think is a great continuation of the Stranger Things monsters gallery, where in the first season it was the Demogorgon and then the Mind Flayer, and we're getting bigger and bigger, but now we're going as this actual human figure who's this kind of weird Freddy Krueger-esque character, and now we're dealing with dreams and nightmares and kind of what's real and what's not. And obviously they bring in Robert Englund to play a character. And once we got to episode 3, I was like, if Robert Englund isn't playing Victor Creel, I'll kind of just sell my whole collection, because there's absolutely no way that's not what they're doing here. And it's exactly what they did. I felt like it was almost a bit too on the nose the way they set up Victor Creel, and it was just the scene from Silence of the Lambs. The layout of going down the steps and going to the end of the hall, seeing the other inmates as we're getting out. It's the same kind of staging on the left, and it's just yeah, it's just, I get it, it's a reference, but it's almost too on the nose for me. Not that it was an issue or anything, but I like the cuter stuff, where Creel is just scratching his fingernail across the board, and it's kind of evoking the fingers of Freddy Krueger. That's a bit more the version of them going down, and it's the Silence of the Lambs scene, wholesale, would be Robert Englund turning around and going sweet dreams, kids, that. Yeah, that would be the more overt thing to do. But it's what they do. It's all about the references, and I will say actually one thing, whenever a character is going on about a movie, oh yeah, it's just war games or whatever, that is the sort of shit nerds would say at the time, but I feel the writers coming through more than the characters sometimes on some of those references where it's just I don't know, I can't switch that part of my brain off fully, I guess, even though it's perfectly in line with those characters and that time period that they would be talking about those movies. It just is what it is. And another criticism, there's a couple of scenes where characters like kind of like really going into deep exposition. And it is what it is. You need exposition to be there, but I felt like it maybe a little bit too explainy. Maybe even a little bit in that final scene with 11 and 1, which was great. That whole reveal, and the actor who plays 1 slash, I'm not sure if he plays Vecna. That'd be interesting. I need to look that up, but that whole dynamic between them, the orderly and 11 in the kind of the flashbacks at the Hawkins lab, really fantastic, especially in that 7th episode. Really, really well done. But his little speech at the end is almost explaining a bit too much when there's like even like the final shot where you see Vecna and it zooms in on the 001 tattoo, and Connie was like, well, yeah, obviously we get it. It is a cool reveal, don't get me wrong, but like, obviously I already knew about it, unfortunately, but I do think that a couple of things could have been held back a little bit more and trust the audience a bit more. I don't know, but those are very minor quibbles in has been so far a fantastic series. And I would say for me, the beginning I was really skeptical because the characters they're growing up, they look different, they feel different, and they're in different places, and everyone's split up. You got there's like 4 or 5 different threads, and it doesn't feel the same. But then as the story continues, it kind of grows into this it just feels like the next natural evolution of this story. And Hawkins, as always, is this kind of like, it's the nexus point, and it's where all the shit is going down. But then there's other things that are happening that are all still feeding back to Hawkins in some way, shape, or form. So I remember when they were saying like, oh, the Stranger Things 4, it's like it's away from Hawkins and stuff, and I was thinking, yeah, bullshit. It's all going to lead back to all roads lead back to Hawkins and Stranger Things. So that kind of turned out to be the case. I've enjoyed the new characters. Eddie Munson, high schooler, looks about 37. It's like we've gone back to Greece. Maybe that's a reference. It's a Greece reference. It's the high schooler kids who look like they're pushing 40. But I like his character. I've liked where it's gone and where it's come to and stuff, and him being introduced to the, hey, this ain't our first rodeo. Like, there's some weird shit out there, and you're about to get a whole guts full of it. And I don't know the character's name, but Jonathan's stoner friend, I really like him. I can see people being annoyed by him, but I really enjoy seeing him. They kind of just got left off in episode 7. Did you notice that? There's just like, okay, we got like an hour and a half episode for the end of volume 1, and they were just gone. That we saw them at Susie's house, and then it was just like, yep, see it. We don't need you in this whole hour and a half feature length episode. At least from what I can remember, maybe there was something, but obviously they're gonna find their way to 11. You would assume in the Project Nina lab in Nevada. Is it Nevada? I'm not sure if it is. It's out in California somewhere or not. Because Nevada's a different state, isn't it? I don't know. Las Vegas, Nevada, California. Okay, California and Nevada are different states, right? I don't know. I'm not the biggest United States of America geography specialist. I know a fair amount, but either way, regardless, I would imagine that Will and Jonathan and Mike and long-haired guy are going to find 11 at some point over the next 2 episodes in volume 2. You would think, because it feels like everything is really just moving together very nicely. The Hopper stuff has been getting criticism. I kind of understand, but it's a nice change of pace. He's really going through a lot of shit, which is nice because to me that means he's not going to have a really bad ending. A friend of mine, we were talking about the show, and this is just like theorizing at the end of the final season, which will be Stranger Things 5 has been announced as the last season. And my friend was saying, I just don't see any way that, we end the whole show with 11 being alive. And I was just like, nah, bullshit. Like, you really think, especially with this one, like they really dig up all her trauma in this season. And every season, she's gone through so much shit. And I'm just like, you really think they're going to torture this poor young girl for like 5 straight seasons and then just kill her at the end? Like, I get it, the dramatic kind of heroic sacrifice to save her friends, but that would feel so it would feel like a slap in the face to me. And I feel like in general, I mean, I guess we're getting into this now. In general, I think that like Game of Thrones is kind of broken how to like end a show or how to like shock an audience and how to kind of get people talking, because you're just seeing show after show ending with like really downbeat or like unsatisfying endings, and fans are mad about it. Look at the end of Game of Thrones, look at the end of Rise of Skywalker, like things like that. And I think that if we have some dour ending to Stranger Things, I'll just put my fucking foot through my television, because for me, you need to have Joyce and Hopper and Eleven alive and happy at the end of the show at the bare minimum, because those three have gone through so much shit, and especially Hopper in this one physically, like he really goes through the ringer in Russia. I enjoyed that stuff, I really did, and even the Joyce and Murray stuff was quite good. I just this season like started out like, oh, this is weird, this is different, and it's been years since we've seen them as well. So it's a year of a gap in the story, but like 2 years as far as when they filmed everything. Well, probably 3 years, because they probably filmed Stranger Things 3 in like 2018. So there's a big jump and I will say Dustin still kind of looks the same to me. Like he just seems to be frozen in time. You can tell he's older, but the look is still pretty much intact. Whereas like all the other kids are kind of, well, maybe Max as well. Sadie Sink, I think is her name. She kind of just looks the same, but a little bit older, like, you know. But there's some of them who just, they're really looking older. So it's like, yeah, it's intriguing to see the differences. And I went back and watched the beginning of episode 1, season 1 last night, and it's like they're like babies, they're like tiny little fetuses. Like the difference is massive. But I do maintain Dustin, out of all of them, still feels very much the same visually. But it was really interesting because at the beginning, I think he says shit or something. He's like, ah, shit. And Connie just turned to me and went, it's not as funny when he's not a young kid, is it? Because she loved like Dustin when he was like 12 or whatever, going like, son of a bitch. Like Connie found so much humor in just kids swearing. And they're not kids anymore, they're teenagers, you know. It's a different feel. So at the beginning I was like, it doesn't quite feel the same. But I really clicked into the story. I love the Vecna stuff. It's really cool. It's a brutal season. I like the whole concept of it. The Max episode, if you want to call it that, with episode 4 was great. I'd have to imagine that Kate Bush probably had to read whatever letter they sent her multiple times, because they're like, yeah, we want to use this song, we're going to pay you this much. Also, we're going to use it in every single episode, so we're going to pay you a lot of money. I'm sure it didn't work out that way. I'm sure it's more to do with the record label and the people who own the song. But I was just like, wow, they're really using this in almost every single episode. But the use of that song, Running Up That Hill, and bridging it into that story of hers was great. And, you know, people were kind of a bit bitchy at the beginning of this show when the trailer came out, because we saw Max at Billy's grave, and people were saying like he was abusive, he was a monster, and he was, you know, horrible to her and everything. And, you know, it's not that simple, you know. And I think they conveyed that well enough in the actual show itself, in the season, where, you know, yeah, it's like we hated each other, but like, you know, she still feels like the fact that she said she stood there when he was sacrificing himself, you know, in the mall. She's survivor's guilt as well, in a way, I suppose. And I like the concept of the letters that she was writing. Lucas really frustrated me. I understand what they were telling with that story, but I was very glad to see him back on side near the end of the volume 1 run of episodes. Now the running time, haven't really noticed it that much. The only thing is that me and Connie only have a very set amount of time to watch stuff together in the evenings now. So I'm noticing the length in terms of like how much time we got left to finish the episode. But as far as like feeling like they're over long or dragging, not in the slightest. I think the pacing has been fantastic throughout the season. The special effects, I have to give a shout out to, are phenomenal. Like one of the things in the first season, a little bit ropey with the Demogorgon stuff. Obviously now they've got a much bigger budget. But I look at Obi-Wan Kenobi, which came out the same day, and it's night and day in terms of some of the the kind of seam covering up that they do in Stranger Things, I think, is phenomenal. Like, there's sequences where they're in the Upside Down, and it's full on digital, it's just digital stuff everywhere with real actors plopped in, and it looks great. Like, it's almost imperceptible. Fantastic visual effects work in this season, I think, and I loved in particular when they were communicating with Dustin through the lights, and Nancy's hands moving through the lights, and the way that was a beautifully realized, very nice visual and stuff like that. They did some de-aging on Millie Bobby Brown to have the young 11 in those flashbacks. It's a very smart choice to have her as herself, as in the age she is now, kind of moving through those memories physically in a physical space, so that you mostly focus on her as she looks now with the kind of the skinhead wig, I suppose, which looks really good, to be fair. It's very difficult to pull that off well, and it looks really good. Obviously they weren't going to get her to shave her head again for this season, but she'll look in the mirror and see her younger self, so it's very brief. And so the kind of de-aging technology, which does look a bit ropey, even with the scarcity of shots in which you see the very young 11, but it's a neat thing, because it kind of, you can hide not having to do the de-aging stuff all the time, but also it's just more interesting dramatically to have someone, again, physically moving through that space of their memories, and kind of in some moments just living through them again and kind of feeling those emotions, but also kind of viewing it in a different way. And that stuff was really cool. And I also love the fact that we get Brenna back, we get Matthew Modine back as that character, but we also get Paul Reiser back, because I feel like he's a very good foil to Brenna, and there's more compassion and warmth coming from his character. And Brenna's still a bit of a mystery to me, as far as, does he even care at all? Because he's very much been set up to be this kind of cold, benevolent kind of, manipulator and abuser of children. And I'm not sure if I'm buying what he's still continuing to try and sell to 11 in this, but there's room for him, I think, to maybe have some sort of redemptive moment, but I really have no idea. But the next episode 8, coming in July, is called Papa. So I'd imagine we get at least the big thing with him, and kind of maybe a resolution to that relationship, maybe a continuation, I don't know. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm really loving what they're doing with the show so far. And we kind of have like 4 episodes worth of stuff coming. So we got the episode 8, and then episode 9 is apparently 2.5 hours long, which is really intriguing to me. And there's a brief teaser of it. If you watch right to the end of episode 7, there's a brief 30-second teaser. And I'm intrigued, and I really want to know where the end game is. I'm almost itching. I'm almost itching now just to think about season 5. I want to know where the big kind of end game plan is. I'm intrigued to see if Vecna will survive and will be the big bad, or whether there's something even bigger, and if they're gonna have a showdown with 11 and Vecna, and she defeats him and kind of quashes that kind of trauma that she had when she was very young, that she pushed away into the back of her mind, and then something bigger comes up and we have like the final boss. I don't know, but it's fun to imagine where they're gonna take this and bring it all to a conclusion. And it's getting to that nervous point for me where it's like, holy shit, if they stick the landing on this show, it's going to be an all-timer for me. I've always loved the show, but like, I think having this 3 years without any new season has kind of hurt it a little bit in my mind, where I kind of almost forgot about Stranger Things entirely. But it's been so nice to get back into that world, and I love those characters so much. And there's been some great moments, many great moments I'm not even going to be able to have the time to go into. I've enjoyed seeing Robin and Nancy kind of, getting together, and Steve, who's just turned out to be one of the best characters of the whole show, and continuing his little bromance with Dustin, and, and Max really going through the ringer in this season. I thought that the actress did a really great job with that. And even like little things like when they go to the Upside Down and Nancy's like, I have guns in my bedroom, and I'm thinking, how does that work? Like, is there just 50 years ago or whatever, a house is being built in the real world, and then in the Upside Down it just builds itself? I don't know. And then you put a gun down and a gun appears in the Upside Down. I don't know how it works. And then they literally kind of address that when they get to Nancy's house, and it's like frozen in time from the moment that Will was taken at the beginning of the whole story. That's intriguing to me. I'm sure they're gonna continue to pull that thread over the next two episodes, and I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to seeing the conclusion. I'm glad that me being spoiled, the whole Vecna 1 thing, wasn't as big of a deal breaker as I thought it might have been. I still really loved the other twists and turns that were taken along the way. And one last thing, I loved the to me it was like, it shouldn't be funny, but when the police are like kind of addressing Hawkins and saying, right, we're going to enforce a curfew, there's someone out there killing these teenagers and stuff, and then that jock prick turns up and he's like, look guys, it's this group and they're Satanists, and everyone's like, yeah, like that's the guy to believe. Like it just felt like a perfect one-to-one analogy of the problem in America. Where it's just like you have a voice of reason and stay calm, and then someone comes in and is like, it's Satanist, and they're like, that's it, it's Satanist, and then everyone just like, and if you've seen the film My Little Pony, The Next Generation, or A New Generation, and are familiar with that film, I'd be very surprised if you were, but I am. I just turned to Connie in that scene and I went, what are we? We're an angry mob. Like, it's just that kind of... let's follow the most outlandish... And the thing is, well, I guess it isn't true. And obviously we know in the universe of this story, these supernatural things do exist, but it felt like it could have been a documentary. Like, small town serial killer, and the public believes that it's a Satanist cult because some teenager said it was. That just cracked me up. It shouldn't, but it just was like, man, it was biting satire as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, Stranger Things 4 Volume 1. What did you think? What are your predictions for the final 2 episodes, and what would you like to see? I feel like it's probably going to end on a down note, and then we kind of have to wait for 5 to kind of resolve that, and then build towards a big finale, I suppose. But Endgame, like, in terms of like what's going to happen at the very end of this show, if we don't get Eleven and Hopper and Joyce, not even all together like as a family or anything, but if we don't get those 3 characters happy and stable, well, now that I think about it, I feel like Joyce has maybe been comfortable for a bit, and she might be on the chopping block. But the thing is, when it comes to deaths in this show, there's been some like rough ones, but like, Eleven died, Brenna died, in season 1, but then they didn't really, as we found out. Then Hopper died in season 3, but they didn't really. That was something that I think they kind of boxed themselves into a corner a bit with, is that, they killed Hopper, and then they had the little post-credit scene at the end of 3 where it's like, oh, not the American, I said Hopper, and people were wondering. They're like, well, we're not going to say anything, And then I think it was maybe a year or 2 later they released a teaser of just Hopper in Russia. And it's like, oh, well, there he is, he's alive. Like, they didn't really hold on to that too closely. And even the show itself doesn't really... there's a bit of a disconnect there, because the end of season 3 is like so emotional, and this powerful moment of him dying and the letter that Eleven reads, and then season 4 starts and it's like, oh, here's a package from Russia, Hopper's still alive, and here he is. It wasn't really dramatically built up to in the way that season 3 ended, and so I felt like season 4 actively took into account what the public and fans of the show who were coming into this 4th season already knew. That makes sense. The whole bully stuff with Eleven was really like upsetting, and like when she hit that girl with the roller skate, I was like, keep hitting her while she's down, like don't stop there, But I loved how it was just this one hit and just split her fucking forehead open, really gruesome. Like, I mean, they could have gone too far with it, but I think it was the right amount of kind of, oh my god, you've split her fucking head open, and that was really impactful. And yeah, anyway, so that was just something I wanted to comment on. I will leave it there. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you with the next one. Hopefully I'll come back with my thoughts on the finale and the last 2 episodes. I don't know if I reviewed season 3. I don't know if I reviewed any of these. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I can't remember. But regardless, I'm loving the show. Loving the score, the cinematography. They're really nailing it. If it wasn't for the fact that Better Call Saul exists and is in its 6th season this year, I'd say this is the best show that I've seen this year so far. And I'm watching more shows lately, which is annoying me because there's so many more movies I'd like to watch, but there's just so much stuff. It's like Moon Knight came out, and then Kenobi, Stranger Things, Better Call Saul came out, and it's just like, oh, okay, enough. And then I got wrapped into this fucking reality show, The Circle, which took up 13 hours of my life, which I wouldn't want to give back. I actually love that show, but it's just like so many shows, and I have all these movies around me. Anyway, right, so I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.